Hello swans and swallows, welcome back to our videos. Today we are going to be watching a video where I'm going to be explaining how we measure volume accurately using a measuring jug. We started looking at volume and capacity yesterday. Hopefully some of you will remember what volume is and the difference between volume and capacity. Volume, if you remember, is the amount of liquid a container actually contains, whereas capacity is the amount of liquid a container can hold if it is full. Today we are going to be focusing on volume, and we're going to start by looking at a journal that I have written. And this looks quite similar to some other journals that we have looked at in class when we were looking at measuring mass and when we were looking at measuring length. So I've saved a copy of this in the swans and the swallows folders, so you can have a look at it on there if you think that's a bit clearer. So step one in our journal is, what unit of measurement does the container use? So we're going to be answering that question before we move on to the next one. Then, what intervals are written on the side of the container? So I'm looking at the units, the numbers that are written along the side of the container and what they are increasing in. Next, what intervals do the midpoints increase in? And we remember that our midpoints are those markers on the side of our container which do not have a unit of measurement written beside them. We call them our midpoints. And the last one is, what level does the liquid reach? That's going to be the last step so that we make sure that we accurately read the volume of liquid that is in that container. So those are the steps we're going to be looking at. As I said, the journal is saved in the swans and the swallows folders, so you can look at that as I explain today if you think that's helpful. So step one was, what unit of measurement does the container use? And I've got my trusty measuring jug back again today. I'm going to cover up the pints measurement with my hand because today we are going to be looking at litres and millilitres only. So my measuring jug is written in litres and parts of litres. So at the top I've got half a litre. I know a litre is 1,000 millilitres, so half a litre is going to be half of 1,500 millilitres. I've also got a quarter of a litre, which is going to be a quarter of 1,000. 1,000 divided by 4 is 250 millilitres. Step two is, what intervals are written on the side of the container? So I'm looking at those intervals, the units that are actually written onto the container. And hopefully you can see that here: 100, 200, 300, 400, and then half a litre, which we said was 500 millilitres. So the intervals that are written on the side of the container go up in 100 millilitres each time. Now we're looking at those midpoints, and you can see that between 0 and 100 millilitres, I've only got one midpoint. So I'm going to be thinking 100 millilitres divided into two parts. What's that midpoint showing me? 100 divided by 2 is 50 millilitres. So I think that my midpoints are going up in 50 millilitres, but let's check. 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400, 450, 500. Yes, so my midpoints are representing 50 millilitres each. And finally, what level does the liquid reach? So first I need to put the liquid in the container. Here. And let's look carefully at the level that the liquid reaches. And you can see that actually it goes past 100 millilitres to the next midpoint. My midpoints equal 50 millilitres each. So 100 add 50 is 150 millilitres. So I can say the volume of water in my glass is 150 millilitres. Let's have another go using a different scale. And this time I've drawn it, so I've represented my measuring jug using a picture. Hopefully you can see that accurately. So this is representing my measuring jug. So I'm going to go through my journal again, just like I did last time. Go through all the steps before I start trying to read how much liquid is actually in the container. So step one, what unit of measurement does the container use? So if we look at it really carefully, we can see it's going up in millilitres. Millilitres only this time. What intervals are written on the side of the container? So I'm looking at the units that are actually written on there. So I can see 5 millilitres, 10 millilitres, 15 millilitres, 20 millilitres, 25 millilitres, and 30 millilitres. They are going up in 5 millilitres each time. Next, the tricky bit. What intervals do the midpoints increase in? Remember, our midpoints are marked on the scale but do not have a unit of measurement written beside them. So here I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 midpoints because I count that last measurement where I can see 5 millilitres. I count that as the last midpoint. So I'll count that again so you can see it clearly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There. 5 millilitres divided by 5 gives me the answer 1. So I think my midpoints are going up in 1 millilitre, but I'm going to check. 1 millilitre, 2 millilitres, 3 millilitres, 4 millilitres, 5 millilitres, 6 millilitres, 7 millilitres, 8 millilitres, 9 millilitres, 10 millilitres. Yes, I think I'm right. And then finally, what level does the liquid reach? So I'm going to draw my liquid in. I'm going to draw it here. So I'm going to draw my liquid on my scale using a blue line because it is, I'm imagining water. So see if you can work out what you think the liquid, the volume of liquid that's in that container. So if I'm looking at it, I know that my midpoints go up in 1 millilitres. I'm going to go to 10 millilitres because that's the nearest one that's written on. And then I'm going to add on 2 lots of 1 millilitre because that is where the liquid line reaches. 10 millilitres, 11 millilitres, 12 millilitres. So I could say that the volume of liquid in my container is 12 millilitres. And you can see how I use my journal today to help me find out how much liquid was in that container. And I recommend you use the journal, even if you just go through it in your head each time, because it helps make sure that you're really looking carefully at the scale and seeing what that liquid level is reaching. I've got one last quick example, which has a different scale again. So this time, my unit of measurement is my millilitres. My units that are written on are 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300. So here my scale is going up in 50 millilitres. My midpoints, I've got one midpoint between 0 and 50 millilitres. So I've got 1, 2, 50 millilitres divided into 2 parts, because I've got those 2 parts there, is 25 millilitres. So I think my scale's going up in 25 millilitres. Let's check. 25 millilitres, 50, 75, 100, 125, 150. Yeah, I think I'm right. So if I were to put my waterline here, which is at the midpoint between 100 and 150 millilitres, I could say that I know that 100 plus 25 is 125 millilitres. There is 125 millilitres in my container, just like that. If the waterline wasn't on a midpoint or a main interval, I would have to kind of estimate to work out what I thought the most likely answer was going to be. So you can see I've drawn a second line on now, which is not on a midpoint or a main interval, but I would guess that it's slightly below 175, so this line might be about 170 millilitres. I'm kind of using estimation because I think it's probably the closest guess I'm going to get to making sure that's accurate. So you'll find the worksheet that you're going to be completing in the Swans and the Swallows folder. I've also saved a challenge question, which involves watching a little video and predicting what's going to happen next. You can write the answer to the challenge question in your home book and send me a picture if you complete that as well. Good luck, and don't forget to email your work into your teacher so that they can mark it and give you some feedback. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon.